What's up, guys? It's Laidback Gamer ZZ. Today I'm going to talk about how to piece together a PC that you're going to build. This video is mainly focusing on, at minimum, a gaming PC, at least around the $600 mark or above. So I'm just going to go through a few processors first, and then we'll jump into the video card, what type of solid state drive or hard drive you should get, maybe the type of RAM, the capacity more specifically than the speed, for your particular build. So I've already sorted this list by the average bench percentage, and this website on User Benchmark is really good for kind of comparing processors and other hardware before actually getting to the purchasing part where you're finding the best price. So this is, you're trying to just figure out what is the best processor for your use. So speaking of use, that's what you're going to really want to think about before putting together the PC. What do you really plan on using the PC for? Are you going to be just gaming? Are you going to be gaming and streaming? Are you going to be doing any type of video editing using Adobe Premiere or maybe DaVinci Resolve or Sony Vegas or other software like that? That'll determine the type of processor you want to go with. You can go with a really low-end processor, but when it comes to video editing, you're going to be going really slow. It's going to take a really long time to edit those videos, even though you might be just fine for gaming. So looking at this list, we can see the first few 5 or 6, maybe the first 10 so far and counting CPUs are really like enthusiast level CPUs. I would say all the way to about number 13 are more like enthusiast processors. Many of these require really high-end motherboards to run because they have a lot of cores. The only exception being number 7. This one you can actually pop into a socket 1151 motherboard that is either a Z370 with updated BIOS or the current Z390 motherboards, and that will run just fine. But the rest of them, all the way to number 13, are enthusiast level. So if you buy one of those processors, you're going to really be into video editing and gaming, but really heavy into video editing. Getting down to more average user or high-end user processors, you have like the Intel i7 9700K, which is a really good performer at that price point. We have some previous generations, which is the 8000 series, that perform quite well. We have the Ryzen Threadrippers, which are, the prices are a little bit inflated to me at this price point, but they are a little bit newer. But maybe could find it at a better price. Previous generation 8700K, decent price. Current generation Core i5 overclockable processor, the 9600K, really good price. This would be, to me, a good sweet spot between your budget processor and your high-end processor is this 9600K. Same thing for the 8600K if the 9600K didn't exist. You can see they're the same price, so you can kind of just forget about the 8600K and go with the 9600K. Kind of the same thing for this 8700. It's not the K version, which means you cannot overclock it, and the initial gigahertz is probably a little bit slower. But for that price, it's not bad. So if you say, hey, I really need to have a little bit more video editing power over the 8600K, and I'm fine at 60 frames a second on video games, this 8700K at that price would be the better choice. This is a really good performer for AMD side, the Ryzen 7 2700X at $270. This is a great processor for video editing, and it's a mid to high end processor for gaming. So its gigahertz is a little bit slower than Intel's offering, but if you're just doing 60 frames a second, possibly 120 frames a second in some games, you should still be okay with this processor. If you're going really budget processor, then you're looking at the Core i3 series processors and some of the lower like Ryzen 5 processors. A lot of those you can find sub $200. So for when it comes to gaming, the higher the gigahertz, usually the more frames per second you're going to get. So on some of the AMD offerings in this price point, the gigahertz aren't quite as high. So we can take a look at this one right quick. So that would kind of limit. So 3.4 gigahertz versus, we'll check out the Intel at that price point. We'll say this i3 series. Thought I saw one right here. So it's about the same price point. So we can see 4 gigahertz. So the video games that are not really optimized for more than 4 threads are gonna probably like this processor a little bit better because it has a higher clock speed. All right, those are probably around the lowest end I would recommend if you're doing a gaming PC that you want to last for the next 3 to 5 years, as far as being able to maintain 60 frames a second with a good video card. So next thing we'll look at is going to be GPU. So I'm going to go to GPU right now. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to sort by the average bench. So it's going to have our highest end performing video card. So this one came out just recently, the Titan RTX video card. This video card doesn't even have a price on it, but I think it's rumored to be somewhere in the $2,500–$2,600 price range. So you really need to be enthusiast level, like you need the best of the best to want to spend that kind of money. I mean, even this RTX 2080 Ti at $1,300 is still pretty expensive, but it is an enthusiast level card. So you're going to be able to play just about any game, 4K, native resolution, 60 frames a second, no problem. We have some older generation Titan V, Titan XP that are still pretty good performers. So maybe you can find someone selling them for a good price, like maybe $700–800 at most. This price right here is overinflated for the GTX 1080 Ti. This is what I personally run in my build, and it is a great performer. Most video games I can run at 4K 60 frames a second. I just have to bump down from ultra to high settings and it works just fine. If you want to get some performance like the 1080 Ti, but you want a newer architecture, the RTX 2080 is the next best choice. I still think the prices are a little inflated at this point, but if you have the money, you really want to build a high-end PC, that's the way to go. Now we can see the prices starting to fall. So you have the RTX 2070. You could probably squeeze this card into a $1,100 PC build, or even possibly a $1,000 PC build, depending on which components you pick. The previous generation that performs kind of close to that would be the GTX 1080. That price is inflated for that particular video card. So if you had to choose between the two, right now on January the 3rd, the RTX 2070 would be the better choice. So AMD's offering, we have liquid cooled RTX Vega. That's a pretty good performer. And then the RTX Vega 64 at that price point, I think it's a little inflated, but I'm not 100% sure. I will say the AMD cards are not as power efficient, so you may have to use a little bit larger power supply in your build if you want to stick with AMD. Now we have the GTX 1070 Ti. This almost performs as well as the GTX 1080, a little bit lower price point, so that would be a good choice. Around, I would say maybe like $400 would be, if you can find it for that price, that would be good as of right now. The Vega 56, a little bit lower performer. See the price is starting to come down. The GTX 1070, if you are not doing anything over 1080p gaming, and especially if you're only doing 60 frames a second, this would be all you need to run pretty much every game, 1080p, 60 frames a second on high or ultra. We have a previous generation GTX 1080 Ti. If you can find it at a good price, like maybe under 300, maybe you want to pull the trigger on that. It's previous gen, so warranty will be non-existent. The 1070, maybe you can find some suppliers that still sell that brand new or with some type of warranty. The Titan X, don't even worry about it. It's overpriced. It's a premium type card. You might see these Quadros. These are for people who do like computer aided design, maybe doing real-time 3D rendering, not necessarily video editing, but 3D rendering. That's what those cards are really designed for. A lot of input output as well. The mobile processor, video cards, they are going to be inside laptops, so you can kind of use this chart if you are leaning towards buying a gaming laptop versus building a desktop computer. We say AMD has some more offerings. Now this RX 590 is a pretty decent performer for that price range. So that's one, if you want to use an AMD GPU, that is definitely one to consider getting. And we can see the average bench is still pretty good. We're in the 80s. We are going down as we continue to scroll down the list. This will probably be the sweet spot for 1080p gaming, which is the GTX 1060 6GB version. You might be able to find it for $200, depending on how the market is going. But that's a really good video card. I actually started off with this about a year and maybe a year and a half ago in my first kind of put together PC gaming build before I really got back into it a lot. The RX 580 is pretty good. It's going to be close to the performance of the GTX 1060. If you want to get the 8GB version though, not the 4GB version, 4GB of video RAM is going to be a thing of the past soon. A lot of games are starting to consume more than that. And that's another previous generation. That card is overpriced, so that's why the price is in red and the value is not as good. Same thing with the RX 480. It is definitely an overpriced card. So as you see, as we go down the list, the video cards start to get older, or we're seeing more mid-range of kind of the current generation cards. If you want 1080p gaming, you're playing more first-person shooters as your game of choice, not really like heavy 3D render open world environment that are current. This RX 570 would probably be a good choice at that price point. Maybe a little bit lower, maybe $15 lower. And that's the first 50. I probably wouldn't go much lower than that. There are some offerings. A lot of people do like the 1050 Ti. So I'm trying to see if I can find that by NVIDIA. And just kind of scrolling through the list here. There it is, 1050 Ti. So we can see that's $160. The average bench is much lower than like the RX 570 and RX 580. So if power consumption is not a big concern for you, you may want to go with the AMD RX 570 or 580 because it will perform a little bit better than this 1050 Ti. All right, moving on to solid state drives. We do average bench results here. And so we see like these Optane, PCI Express, solid state drives. Those are really great performers. They plug right into the PCI Express bus on the motherboard. So they're going to have a really high write or megabytes per second. But I'm going to sort this list by write speed, because they are actually a newer type connections now that are PCI Express, but they plug into an M.2 type slot, which the motherboard I'm currently using has a couple of these slots. One of them supports the NVMe, which is one of the newer type of solid state drive. So we can see the write speed is pretty high. We're talking about 2 gigabytes a second write speed for this Samsung. Now you are paying a premium. $250 is quite a bit for a 1 terabyte drive. You can see if you want to just get a 500 gigabyte as your primary drive and maybe have a secondary hard drive or a lower end solid state drive for your gaming drive or your storage drive, that would be an option. So you can see $120. So the pro version of these are even more expensive, but they come with a 10-year warranty. So just to put it in perspective, as of right now, the drive would be in warranty until 2029. Most of us probably would have another car by then, so that is quite impressive. But that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that performance, but also the reliability, and backed by a great warranty. So I'm going to keep moving down the list a little bit, because maybe not everyone needs the absolute highest end speed when it comes to their solid state drive. Maybe you're just looking for something that is still quick, way faster than the traditional drive, but not the highest end of the highest end drive. So we're going to move down and we're going to try to find some a little bit more affordable prices. I'm really looking for 1 terabyte drives that are under $150. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to sort this list out, and we're going to reduce the price down a bit. Shoot for 151. Let's see what we can find. Let's see if we can find any 1 terabyte drives in that price range. So I'm going to increase the capacity as well. All right. So apparently, if that price is right, there's an Evo solid state drive for $53. It's on eBay. Not sure how that's even possible. That is quite amazing. You see the Amazon sells for 147, B&H Photo 148, Newegg for 148. So let's see why it's so low. Oh, so yep, that's already gone. So if it was for sale, it was put up there by mistake, and it is already gone. So more realistically, as of right now, you're seeing sub $150 prices. We do see the write speed is a whole lot lower because all these so far are using the SATA interface versus PCI Express. And so we're seeing a write speed of 400, 450 average. But to keep that in perspective, that's still about 4 to 5 times faster than your traditional hard drives. That's still coming a lot of brand new computers, which is surprising. You would definitely see a pretty fast boot up with these speeds of Windows or Linux or whatever operating system you prefer to use. You're talking like 10 seconds, maybe 12 seconds at most for boot up with these particular drives. So these would be great for boot up, and they would also be great for storage compared to a traditional hard drive. All right, so if you really need to go for a traditional hard drive, we're going to click on HDD, and so we're going to go at minimum 1 terabyte because if you're going traditional drive, you need space. That's probably why you're going that route. So we're going to bump our capacity up. So I would say like 2 terabytes would probably be what you want to go for. So we'll see if that shows us. All right, look like I went a little too high. So we'll do it like that. All right. So average benchmark percentages. So you can see really high end drive, 12 terabytes. So your average benchmark percentage is usually going to yield the highest end drives and the largest capacity drives as well. But even at that, we can see like this Seagate Barracuda 2 terabyte, $60. So great price for the drive. You can spend an extra 25 and get the 3 terabytes. So you're increasing your size by a good amount without increasing the cost by that much. Gonna drill down through some more. I mean, it's just amazing that I see 6 terabyte drives, 12 terabyte drives. I mean, capacities like that were like unheard of for the consumer not that long ago. So this is quite impressive to see that. So this Black Edition drive, notice how it's, well, it has 2013, so it's an old model, and it's expensive. A lot of the Black Edition drives from Western Digital come for a longer warranty. So that's why they cost more. And they also have better parts inside of the hard drive to help reduce the wear and tear and help kind of boost the speed of the drive. But this is a storage drive, so we really don't need that much of a boost of speed since we already have a solid state drive as our primary drive. So the list is really extensive. So this is a great website, userbenchmark.com, to kind of look through some parts there and kind of figure out what are you really looking for. Last thing, major part of the system is going to be RAM. Average benchmark performer. We can see we can have some pretty high-end memory here where we're spending $500 or more for a set, $680 right there for a set. But they perform really, really well. I think for most people though, you're really not going to need that much speed for gaming purposes. So I'm going to narrow down the price kind of realistically. Maybe you can find a 16 gig set for under 200. Let's see what the market is showing. So here's the 16 gig set for 180. really high frequency, 3600. Good benchmark as far as gigabytes per second, 26. Performs really well in the average benchmarks. We have a little bit higher end at 175 for this G.Skill. So the frequency is a little bit lower, but the gigabyte per second transfer is actually higher. So frequency is not the only measure of speed when it comes to the type of RAM that you're using. Now notice the configuration is a little bit different. So this is 4 by 4 gigabytes. So that's 4 sticks of RAM. So you want to make sure your motherboard has 4 slots. And I would recommend the motherboard have 4 slots anyway, so that way you have room to upgrade without having to replace your current memory sticks you have in there. Minimum, you always want to run 2 memory sticks though to run in dual channel mode, which will give you your best performance. So you can drill down through this list and you can kind of see the different processors, how they perform, different RAM, and see how they perform. Value, sentiment, average, benchmark. As you can see, as we go down, things start to turn yellow and red, so not quite the best. So you want to kind of stay in that green for the average percentage benchmark. It's kind of saying, hey, on average, this ranks pretty well and is pretty consistent performer. And we're seeing some 130 price range here, which is pretty good. Ideally, you want to try to shoot for the 2x8 configuration. So here's the Ripsaw right here. This is pretty good by G.Skill. 28.1 gigabytes per second, good performer. 3200 megahertz frequency, so good frequency there. So that's kind of like how you can drill down and use the list. So once you've kind of figured out, all right, well, this is the performance that I want. Now you need to kind of put it together. A good website I recommend is PC Part Picker for kind of building a system. So you'll click on start a build, you'll choose a CPU. You've already found the CPU that you want, so you just choose it from the list. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to choose the an i7 processor. We'll go with the 9700K. We'll add that to the list. And the K series do not come with a CPU cooler, so we do have to buy a CPU cooler separately. And the Cooler Master is actually what I use. I have the Hyper 212 Evo. It's a really good performer, pretty decent overclocker. You're not gonna get the highest end possible overclock on that cooler, but for price and performance, you can see like liquid cooling about 70 bucks. We can see some other liquid cooling, $130. Not sure if that's a liquid cooler or not. That looks like it's a liquid cooler, 70 bucks. So if you want to spend, more, you definitely can. You'll probably get a little bit more performance out of your processor if you plan on overclocking it really hard. Go for liquid cooling. So we'll just, for the purpose of this build, we'll just go ahead and click that one. This is one I'm familiar with. I know it works well. We'll choose a motherboard. All right, so for motherboard, we're gonna see if we can actually choose the wrong thing. All right, right now it's showing LGA 1151 on all of our motherboards. So we're gonna see if we can actually choose the wrong motherboard. So this website actually limits us to just a motherboard that is compatible with the processor. So you don't really have to worry about choosing the wrong type of motherboard. ATX form factor. ATX is like your average size. Micro ATX if you're going with a small case. Something maybe where you're gonna hook up to a television and you want to sit on maybe your TV stand quite nicely. Maybe you want to get a micro ATX motherboard so it can go into a smaller case. You want to stick with 4 RAM slots. That's my recommendation. You want to stick with something that can support 64 gigs of RAM for future proofing. Since this is a pretty overclockable processor, I recommend making sure that you see the word Z370 or Z390 in the motherboard name, so that way you know it will overclock and be able to handle the overclock of the processor pretty well without damaging the motherboard. We're gonna go for Z390, so we don't have to worry about trying to do a BIOS update since we picked a 9th generation processor. For this purpose, we'll just go for whatever 390 kind of land on here. So it's pretty high end, so we'll go for it though. We'll add it. And when it comes to memory, 2x8 configuration is the minimum I recommend. You could, if you find a 2x16 configuration, if you want to just jump right to 32 gigabytes, so you know in the future you just add another 32 gigabytes, you could do that as well. So you can see the list is pretty extensive. We have 22 pages of RAM to choose from, so that's quite impressive. G.Skill is a brand that stands by their product. I like them. So it looks like a pretty good price there. You also have the Corsair Vengeance, pretty good company. So that's at $259. So just quickly looking, you can kind of find something maybe more so in your price range that you're looking for. So the 269, 259, this doesn't have a rating, so I'm not really going to jump on that. I want to see something that at least has a good rating. So this one has a decent rating, a little bit lower speed. So we got a really high-end motherboard, so probably want to get something that has a little bit more speed. I would say maybe 3200 minimum. So let's see, the Corsair. We'll stick with the G.Skill right here. Oh, we'll do the Corsair 259. That's good. All right, so you know you're good 32 gigs. So we are using up all the slots, but it's still a whole lot of RAM. It's even by the standard of maybe 2 or 3, 4 years down the line. Plenty of RAM to work with right there. All right, so we'll choose storage. So we'll narrow down the list a little bit so we can kind of get this type of storage we're looking for. We'll do solid state drive. The motherboard should support a M.2. All right, we're trying to see if they had the type. Oh, there it is. PCI Express M.2. Let's see, show all. I was trying to see if they had NVMe. So I do see some of them have that in the name. So we can kind of see the type of interface that they have. All right, so we'll look for a capacity of about 500 gigabytes as our boot drive. I don't see capacity listed over there, so we're gonna have to kind of scan through here to find a 500 gigabyte capacity. 512 would be nice. So this price point, this is probably not an NVMe drive. This is probably just a SATA drive that pops into that particular slot. If you don't see any ratings, maybe not the best drive to go with. You want to go with something that has ratings. So I'm going to sort by ratings. You want to have someone with a decent rating. Let's see if we can get. Let's see if that's actually a SATA or NVMe type drive. All right, so PCI Express, so that is definitely a type of drive that we want. So really great performance drive. You are paying a slight premium over some other companies, but you know you're getting a company that's standing behind their product, and you shouldn't have any issues as far as if you needed to return a drive. So we'll add that to the list. Then we'll do an additional storage drive. because if you're playing any type of modern games, a lot of games now take up 50 gigabytes or more to AAA titles, so you need a larger drive to install the games on. So we're going to look for capacity. I would say like maybe 4 terabytes for this particular build. See if we can find anything in that range for a decent price. Trying to find something close to $100 that has a decent rating. All right, so we have Seagate at 107. Another Seagate, a little bit slower RPM appears to be at 98. So let's go with this one for now. All right, video card. So I'm gonna choose a video card. We'll just go with things that have at least that amount of rating. So Asus, EVGA, MSI, a lot of these companies have at least a 3-year warranty, so they're pretty good as far as standing behind their product. For this purpose, we will look at, since we have a really high-end processor, I think the minimum would be a 780 Ti. We can just do the RTX 2070, so that'd be a better performer, 2080. And we'll just shoot for that. All right, so all these pretty good ratings since we sorted it that way. So EVGA has that card. We'll just add that in there. Choose the case. So this is where you can kind of play around with what you're looking for. My computer in particular does not have a optical drive. It is just USB ports and a few other ports. So if I wanted to use a disk, I actually have to hook an external disk drive up to it. But maybe you're the type person who still wants to have an optical drive. So if you're that type person, you want to make sure it has a external 5 1/4 bay. So if, see all these are the zeros, they would not have that bay to actually put a internal optical drive into the case. Some cases do come with power supplies. Most time I recommend buying a power supply. You'll get a better quality, something's going to last a lot longer, and something that's backed by a good warranty. So case is going to be your preference. A ATX mid-tower case will hold a ATX motherboard. ATX full tower case is going to be a little bit taller and can actually hold most time extended ATX cases. So this preference, mostly it's preference, up to you what you would want to pick. So I'm going to go with, we'll sort by name. Looking for the PEs, going to try to find the case that I actually purchased myself. I see Phanteks. This is similar to the case that I purchased. Particular model that I have actually has RGB lights and things like that on it. So I don't even know the model off the top of my head, so I probably won't be able to find the case that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to make sure we pick a mid-tower, tempered glass. So yeah, that's about the price paid for mine. All right, let's see if we can get a close-up of what the case looks like. All right, so this is a pretty basic looking case. It does have tempered glass, does have some air filters on there, and it's a pretty decent size. It can hold a big power supply, so you got plenty of hard drive bays in there, plenty of expansion bays on the back. They got some wire management shrouds in there as well. And on the back side, you can also put some, if you want to have some 2.5-inch drives on the back, give space for that as well. A little holder, cable holders. So yeah, so that's a decent case. probably want a little bit more airflow on the side. So maybe there's another case by that manufacturer. I know mine in particular does have vents on the side. Just don't remember the model off the top of my head. All right, and back to our system build. So power supply. For this video card and the CPU, if you overclock the CPU, you are going to need more power supply than what the processor is saying to default. So we got a compatibility check. Let's see some notes here. So the motherboard shares bandwidth with the SATA port. When it is populated, one SATA port is disabled. So that tends to be what happens with when you use this type of solid state drive. All right, power supply. So with this type of build, you know, we're kind of high end on the build. We are really high end on the build based on the price I saw. So I would say minimum 750 watt power supply. 80% gold and platinum it means that the power supply is really efficient. So we want to maybe titanium. That's new. I had not seen that before. So it shows you it's been a while. So I looked at power supplies really in depth. So we want to go with something that has good ratings though. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the rating side. And so I don't think you really need to spend more than $200 for a power supply, but the choice is yours. I think the wattage and the efficiency is a little bit more important, especially if you're only running a single video card and not running multiple video cards. So I see 168 is a decent price. EVGA, this platinum is a good price at 850 watt for $150. So we'll go with that. And it's modular, so you only need to use the cables that you want to use. So our particular case does not have a optical drive slot, so we're not going to worry about that. Operating system, you want to always use the Pro version, get a little bit more security, 64-bit. Don't know why anyone would need to install 32-bit. For gaming, I don't recommend it, but if you need to run a really old application that's just not compatible with 64-bit at all, maybe that's for you. I will say when using Microsoft Windows 10, you can install it and run it for free, but there will be a watermark that's going to be over everything you do on the PC. And so if you don't want that watermark, my recommendation is to go ahead and purchase a copy of Windows 10 for yourself. The good thing with Windows 10 is actually a digital license key. So if you use a Microsoft account or you have a Microsoft account, you go ahead and log in with that information, and that key will actually follow you. I'm not sure to what extent, like I'm not sure if you can actually change the whole computer and the key will follow you. I haven't really played around with that much, but I'm sure if you do some search on the internet, you can find that answer. Now monitor, with the video card that we have, we can do 1440p gaming with no problem. We should be just fine. So when choosing a monitor, we want to make sure the resolution is at least 1440p. So we'll get ratings here. And so we got different versions of 1440p, the traditional 16:9, or you can do an ultra wide. So we'll look at both of those and see what's up. All right, so response time, if you are more into first-person shooters, especially like Battlefield, Call of Duty, especially the Call of Duty Black Ops series where you're competing with other people online, possibly Rainbow Six Siege, you need that really quick response time. You want to shoot for the lowest number possible that you can afford. So Asus has a pretty good one right here, this price range for 27-inch, $229. Even Dell has some offerings, their Performance Series monitor right there. It is a little bit higher on the response time. So we can see the sizes and response times. Most of these have pretty decent amount of reviews. The BenQ has a good amount of reviews and ratings. This Asus right here seems to be one that a lot of people like, even though it has a little bit higher response time. And so IPS is what a lot of people use for monitors. It allows wide angle viewing without changing the colors or the blackness levels too much when you're looking at it from the side. If you want more deep black colors, better contrast ratio, then maybe non-IPS is the type of panel that you want to look for. It's like this Samsung is probably going to be what's called a VA panel, and that perform quite nicely for black levels and kind of give you a little bit more realistic look. But if you're really close to the monitor, you're going to be seeing the side, you're going to be seeing like the left and right side at different angles, and you may notice a color shift. But if you're a little bit further back, you'll get a great picture quality. I mean, so many monitors here, it's actually kind of hard to pick one. So you could really spend hours and hours and hours trying to find out what you want to use. I'm going to shoot for something with a low response time and then work my way from there. Set up by price. Keep going back to the Asus, so I'll just go with that. All right, so as you can see, this build came out to, it's going to be roughly $2,200. If you were to build this through like a Dell or HP or maybe Alienware or other type of manufacturer that pre-builds gaming PCs, you're probably going to add at least an extra $500 to $600 onto that price right there. So it does save money by purchasing the computer and putting it together yourself. So that's all for this video. I just kind of wanted to show you how to piece together a computer if you're interested in trying to build your own computer. Later on, I may do some recommendations of a budget computer, a mid-range computer, and a high-end computer. This is kind of just an all thrown together computer with some really high-end parts, some really not so high-end parts, just to try to give you an idea of a custom build. So that's it. So this has been Laid Back Gamer. If you like the video, thumbs up. If you hate the build and the video is way too long for you, thumbs down. That's absolutely fine. I'm taking any criticism, no problem. If you like it, like, share, comment, subscribe. Thanks.